In their attempt to make sense of these unprecedented times, many writers, religious leaders, and authors have called upon the metaphors of light and dark. It doesn't surprise me in the least. It's relatable, and we all experience both light and dark throughout our lives and on every single day and night. I'd like to explore this approach with you today, and I ask you to join me in bending the light and embracing the dark. Our days begin in darkness, literally. Unlike with the secular calendar where days begin at the break of dawn, each day of the Jewish calendar begins with the setting of the sun. When we begin the day in darkness, we infuse that darkness with hope and purpose. Suddenly the night loses some of its dread, and instead of seeing the dark of night with fear and anxiety, something we have been programmed to do, we see it as a time for preparation, renewal, and anticipation for the dawn of new possibilities that's sure to come. And this is equally true of societal darkness. For many of our greatest inventions, cures, and systemic changes have come from disaster, disruption of the norm, and from the darkest periods of history. Our entire world is currently facing a darkness the likes of which none of us have ever seen before. 7 months ago, the lights went out, suddenly, and with little warning. And it fell not only on us in our otherwise comfortable lives, but blanketed people across the entire planet. We are living within a global crisis of the greatest magnitude, considered by many to be the most significant threat to humanity since World War II. Yes, there were some warnings, but when it came, we were all unprepared. No vaccines, not enough masks or respirators, no emergency response infrastructure, no global mechanisms for collaboration, and pitiful national leadership. The darkness was disorienting. It still is. It caused us to retreat to our homes, our safe spaces, cutting off our physical connection to one another and to life as we knew it. And here we are, at Rosh Hashanah, separated from one another, still with very little light in sight. We are not yet seeing the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. Life has changed dramatically. Much of the light and joy that was once present in our life experiences has been virtually extinguished. When will this end? And how will we emerge on the other side? Where can we find the silver lining? Is there one? Our current crisis serves as a torchlight and casts a bright light on societal ills that we have been unaware of, or more likely ones that we choose to ignore. In the light, we find long existing deep stress cracks and shortcomings. A midrash wisely points out that you can only see light from the dark part of your eye. How ironic it is that the darkness itself is that which illuminates our current reality, not the other way around. Without the darkness, we might continue with the status quo, minding our own business, doing what works for us as individuals without striving to correct all that calls out for our attention and needs repair. The light I speak of reveals how insufficient our healthcare system is in dealing with widespread illness, and how it discriminates against the most vulnerable populations, with millions of people in the U.S. left without any healthcare coverage at all. It has revealed a vast and growing chasm of poverty, as 1 in 8 Americans currently live below the poverty line, more than 3/4 living from paycheck to paycheck, and tens of millions who suffer from food insecurity. And the curtain has also been pulled back on the American workplace, only to reveal that it too is in a state of crisis. Americans work too many hours and spend too much time commuting, and too little time in meaningful and personally rewarding endeavors, all of which leads to an unhealthy, sedentary lifestyle. Perhaps the most vivid light, with intense focus and brightness, shines on the pervasive systemic racial discrimination that our country has never come to terms with and clearly has not eradicated. We see this in the condition of many of our minority populations and their lack of access to health care, job and career advancement, housing, and their well-founded fear of pervasive police brutality. When we turn back to the beginning of time, we find that today, Rosh Hashanah, is the birthday of creation, Hayom Harat Olam, and the introduction of light into the environment of chaos and darkness. Our liturgy calls us back to the beginning of time to imagine a beautifully created universe in perfect harmony, without disease, famine, or strife. On that very first day of creation, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Light was created to shed light onto the rest of creation and to illuminate the darkness. And God called it good because light is good. But because it's good doesn't mean that the opposite is true, that darkness is not good. For we need the darkness to complement and balance the light, which in turn provides us with appreciation and greater perspective. The darkness of our challenges amplifies the light or blessings in our lives and helps move us towards gathering more of it. This is true of our personal lives as well as our society. We see radiant sparks of light in our own Beth community. To make sure the most vulnerable among us remain connected to our community during our quarantine, we guided each and every member, even the most technologically challenged, to gain comfort in accessing the technology. We created a continual flow of almost 200 diverse programs, most of which were generously offered by your fellow congregants. From our darkness, we were also forced to completely reimagine our High Holy Day experience and create a 40-day journey of spiritual, educational, and cultural offerings to creatively prepare us for Teshuvah and our days of awe. Even as we struggle through our darkened world, we continue to look beyond ourselves to usher light and justice into the world. When George Floyd was murdered in May of this year, Beth led our greater Miami community with over 200 vehicles in our Compassion Caravan throughout the Liberty City and Overtown communities so that we could be present and stand with our brothers and sisters to protest the pervasive racial justice in our county and our country. Thank you, Marvin Dunn, for your wisdom and insight. It's not easy to bring light and hope to others when you yourself are in the midst of darkness. I share with you this creation midrash that imagines Adam, the first human being experiencing the winter solstice for the very first time. Adam cried out, for he thought the days were slipping away and the light disappearing from his world. As the darkness deepens, Adam looks up and sees the stars are still hanging in the heavens above him and looks below to see the earth still anchored at his feet. Something shifts in him. He learns to embrace the darkness and look for the hope and deeper meaning in the world around him. There are many stars that have emerged from our isolation, and I am sure that each of us can point to some bright moments during our time in quarantine. There has been a significant decrease in air pollution due to a severe reduction in travel and industrial production. We continue to witness human compassion at its best, from healthcare workers who risk their lives to care for COVID patients and others who suffer and even die alone in hospital wards without their loved ones by their side. We heard stories of people with antibodies and rare blood types, like my daughter, who regularly gave blood to save the lives of COVID patients. Teachers had to learn new applications and methodologies to teach and guide our children virtually. We know many families and friends who use the time to connect and reconnect with each other using online platforms in ways they had never done before. We've used the time to expand our horizons and improve our physical and mental well-being by reading books and taking online courses, exercising more, learning new hobbies, and spending more time in nature. When my daughters both lost their jobs and returned home, Randy and I found an unexpected gift in the 3 months of uninterrupted precious time with them, laughing and talking, sharing, exercising, watching movies, and loving each other. We've seen how engagements and weddings and other celebrations have taken place in spite of it all. There is light, light that forces its way through the cracks in the darkness. We simply have to look for it, perhaps in places we never looked before. Judaism gives us the strength not only to survive this current reality, but to transform it. Light needs the darkness, and darkness needs the light. We need only to turn to nature to see that we could not survive if the sun burned brightly 24/7, nor could we thrive if we knew only darkness. And what would a day be like without the magnificence of a sunset or the breaking light of dawn? Instead of seeing the darkness as something to fear and repel, let us learn to embrace this moment, this day of darkness, to emerge from it like the break of a new day, to transform and heal ourselves and the world in which we live. May we find redemption soon, shining brighter and with more focus. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May it be God's will.